Hello again. Well, we've noticed a real uptick in crypto people moving to the island. Partly, I think, prompted by a bit of a worry about exit taxes in the UK. So some of them are trying to get out before the autumn budget, which is difficult, but probably sensible if you can do it. But anyway, I thought I'd do a little video on crypto people and the Isle of Man because I really love crypto people, to be fair. So, I mean, why are they moving here? Well, as I've just mentioned, the obvious thing is obviously we have some tax advantages here in the Isle of Man for crypto. In particular, we don't have capital gains tax, and also we don't have inheritance tax. So, to go back to the capital gains tax side of things, if you can leave the UK for tax purposes, i.e., cease your UK residence and move to the Isle of Man, then you can immediately sell your crypto without any UK capital gains tax implications. You will need to stay away for 5 years because initially, when you leave the UK, you're treated as a temporary non resident, but you won't have to wait 5 years until you can sell it. So that's the good news. For inheritance tax, there is no inheritance tax in the Isle of Man, so that keeps things nice and simple at this end. But in the UK, there is now a 10-year tail. So if you are leaving the UK and you've been there, permanently prior to leaving, you're probably going to need to be out of the UK for 10 years before your inheritance tax obligations fall away. But if you move here permanently, that will happen in due course. I'll just mention income tax as well, not always very relevant for crypto people because, of course, many of them live on capital gains in any case, or actually these days increasingly borrow against their crypto bags. But our top income tax rate is 21%. So it might be relevant if you're a trader. And if you are, then that will be the applicable rate because trading income is probably income. But there are ways you can structure it through a zero tax company as well, which can make things a little bit less painful in that regard. So that's kind of a little summary of the tax side of things. But as I say, crypto people are a little bit special, and I think the reason many of them are moving is not purely tax based, although of course that is important. Actually, they are people who have a particular mindset around things like independence and freedom and resilience, and they're thinking about what's going on with the world and where we're going. And I think that they kind of like the Isle of Man because it sort of matches their concerns, or rather, it addresses some of their concerns. We're a self governing crown dependency, so decisions in the Isle of Man are made locally and not in Westminster. Although decisions in Westminster obviously do affect us to some degree, but the actual day to day policies are made locally. We're also a very safe society. There is very little crime here. People still routinely don't lock their cars and this sort of thing, which is nice. And people generally don't have to worry too much about, going out and being mugged and so on. You can probably still walk around with your Rolex on if you really want to. Um, so that kind of gives people that nice sort of feeling. And of course, if you do steal something here, it's going to be quite easy for the police to find you because some one way or another you're going to have to leave the Isle of Man as well. So having that moat around the island definitely helps from a security perspective. Resilience is also an important thing. I think that there's all sorts of threats that could occur in the UK over the next few years, or in fact are already happening. I'm talking about things like civil unrest, which can either be caused by people protesting about the immigration matters, or they can be caused in future maybe because there's not enough jobs, because AI has had an effect on the shape of the job market and so on. And that makes life very difficult for people. So the future's uncertain, but I do think being here in the Isle of Man provides a little bit of resilience from that. And I think, COVID it was a good example of that. It kind of proves the point in some ways. The Isle of Man shut its borders early, and we had very limited lockdowns here compared with the UK. And in fact, the whole of our summer of 2020 was blissful. The weather was fantastic, and the restaurants were all open. There were lots of concerts during the school time. The schools were open as well. And in fact, one of our nightclubs here on the island at one point went viral on the basis it was the busiest nightclub in Europe, simply because all of the others were closed. So the decisive action that was shown by our government definitely meant that we had a pretty quick return to normal life compared to everybody else. And, it's not just me who's identified this. HSBC have identified the Isle of Man as the best place to live in the British Isles. The Global Residence Index 2025, I think it was, noted that the Isle of Man was now the third safest place to live in the world, second only to Andorra or Luxembourg. So that is quite impressive, really. So I think that's why the crypto people like it here. Even things like when you're completing your tax return here, there is nowhere on the tax return to put anything in relation to capital gains tax because we don't have any. So you don't have to even say what you've sold on the crypto side or what you've got or anything like that. So, there's an additional kind of privacy aspect, which I think people also appreciate if they're crypto people. So, just to sort of summarize before closing, yes, it's tax efficient. We've got 0% CGT, no IHT, and lower income tax, but also it's safe, it's resilient, it's self-governing society, and we've proven this in practice during COVID. So I think it's a really great place for crypto people to come and live. And if you want to learn anything further about moving to the Isle of Man, how that might work, then feel free to contact us. My WhatsApp is in the description below, as well as a couple of links that you might find useful. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to hearing from you.